Yes, that is a really, really good question. As a matter of fact, I might ask this of some of my professor friends
Please do. Let
because
me know.
no, I love that question, and I will guarantee you that there are absolutely people trying to figure that out.
If you're watching this right now and you haven't hit the like button, Billy, get on it. Bug your brother. Tell him to do the same. We are so excited to be joined by today's guest, the one and the only pitching ninja, Rob Friedman. Welcome to the Walk-Off, man. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. Very exciting.
Oh, man, we are so excited to have you. I'm going to start with just kind of fanboying a little bit. I am a huge fan of the content. You just have this way of breaking down the art of pitching and highlighting how difficult it is to throw a baseball in these like consumable morsels, like the overlays, the way you can point out pitches that maybe a layman like myself would just miss the beauty of. It's fantastic, man. So thank you for the content.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Spend all day doing it too. So if I didn't like it, it would suck, right?
I'm sure this is a question you've been asked a million times. And before we dive into certain pitchers and the Blue Jays and get to listener questions, we'll start with this. All right. So how did Pitching Ninja start? How did you build this empire? You went from a successful attorney and then turn your attention to baseball content.
Oh, it is a long story, and I never expected to do it, which is the weird thing. Like, I didn't start out saying, boy, you know what I want to do? I want to spend my whole day on Twitter and YouTube and doing all this stuff. But it just happened. So I started out coaching, and I started actually first I started just like watching my kids were playing. My son started playing baseball, and everybody's like, oh, you're really good with kids. You're good at breaking things down and teaching them. So I started kind of helping out. And then I was like, I never was an awesome baseball player. I want to learn like the latest and greatest stuff and really figure out what's going on and kind of figure out like who's wrong, who's right. There's a bunch of people teaching stuff. And I was like, I'm an attorney. I can usually cut through this stuff and figure out what's marketing, blah, 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 and what is real. And that led me down a path of just breaking things down constantly and challenging ideas. And part of it, like, that's the beauty of not having been taught everything right, is either you can teach it and pay it forward wrong, or you can say, you know what, I want to teach the right stuff or the best stuff that I know how to teach. And that's always kind of my mindset. So what happened is I spent a lot of time doing that. And as I realized that I was probably not going to coach forever, I mean, I coached travel ball, I coached high school ball on the side, just again, I was a lawyer and also started my own internet company 20 something years ago, internet software company. So between that stuff, I was like, I'm not going to coach all, forever. I'm going to share what I learned on Twitter. And I kept sharing and sharing and sharing. And that just kept taking off. Like, I'd start getting asked more and more questions and doing more and more stuff. And then like pro guys are starting to ask me questions. I'm like, wait, you're in the pros. I'm just dude with a computer. And it ended up like, that was really cool because it made me think, hey, I'm doing something different and people are finding it interesting. So it made it more and more interesting for me. It made me do more and more stuff. And then after a while, I was like, do I really want to be known as a lawyer or what my, internet software ninja, or would I rather be known as pitching ninja? And I was like, you know what? I like this stuff way better. I feel like I'm having way more fun doing it. So now I do this most of my day. I still am involved in my former company, but this is what I do primarily. And that was the long story of kind of where I got where I am.
Well, we're thrilled that that's where you landed on this. Where did the logo come from? Because it is one of my favorites. It is incredible.
It is a great logo, and it's done by a great dude, Rotoware. So again, it was one of these guys, he loved what I was doing. He's like, I came up with this logo for you. And I looked at it, I was like, that's perfect, dude. This is awesome. And I didn't even follow his stuff for a long time. And then I started looking at all the stuff he does. Great designer, great dude, like one of the best guys in baseball for stuff. So I am very happy to be associated with him for years and years. He's just always does the right thing. Really good dude.
So I'm sure you saw this coming, being we here on the Walk-Off are a Blue Jays focused podcast, and you highlight Kevin Gausman.
See, I have my blue. I changed my light to blue today.
We respect that. That is great stuff. So you do highlight Kevin Gausman a lot. So a couple questions. Number one, do you feel his splitter is a top 10 pitch in baseball? And expand on why Blue Jays fans should be excited that he's in the fold for the next 4 years.
Oh, I love Kevin Gausman. Not only, I mean, a fantastic dude in general, like down to earth, really good guy. But his splitter is absolutely one of the top 10 pitches in baseball, and is every time when it's on, it is unhittable. Like it's an absolute elite splitter of all time. It's one of the most unhittable pitches you will ever see, with one of the most unique grips you'll ever see too. I did an interview with him, and we took 20 minutes just describing his splitter grip. And it wasn't me just asking questions. He was so excited to be explaining it in every last detail. The fact he gets blood blisters before games, so he doesn't throw it in practice. And he knows it's going to be good if he does have a blood blister. It's coming off the finger right and stuff. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of him. Huge fan of the Blue Jays staff in general. I've had the opportunity to interview Chris Bassett over the years. He's one of my, I consider a good friend. And he's fantastic. Just a solid pitching staff in general. I'm a big fan.
Nothing has made me
and
respect.
Alek Manoah, obviously, they left him out.
That goes without saying.
Like Alek Manoah is a larger than life character who, I've known for a long time. Actually, I've been following him since he was in high school, and had him on as well. And consider him a friend, and he is just a great dude, like a force of nature, both personality wise and pitching wise, and love the dude.
Rob, calm Blue Jays fans down then. These first 4 starts, this is just a bump in the road of a very successful career, correct?
I mean, you have to look at it that way. I know it sucks when it happens. It sucks for me because I don't like watching somebody struggle. Like, I'm watching him, and it's hard to tell what's going wrong. He's just not synced up right. But knowing him, he's a very hard worker, and his stuff in general will play. I'd love to see the K's jump up again. To me, I love his sinker slider mix. I know his four-seamer is very effective for him as well. But and his changeup's got better. So he's got, like, his changeup is light years better than it's been. It's just a matter of putting it together, maybe thinking too much, maybe thinking that he had a lot of doubters out there coming into this season, that, he was lights out last year, but some of the secondary stats made it look like it was a little bit of luck. And, not that he wasn't great, but people were harping on that. And I think he's come out, tried to prove something. And sometimes you become something, you're trying almost too hard, because he is a competitor, and he wants to outcompete you, and wants to show doubters they're wrong. But sometimes when you do that, you take yourself out of your game. And I know he can settle back in, and he's going to be fine. He's going to have a long career. Like, dude is a pitcher, a stud, but it sucks when it happens. It sucks when things happen with, like, Jose Barrios, who also has ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
And like, you see glimmers of this dude is ridiculous, and then he's ridiculously bad. And it's hard as a fan to deal with the ups and downs. But as a coach, as a manager, as a player, you have to try to settle it out, because fans yelling at you doesn't help. You have to figure it out and try to keep a level heartbeat, and figure, if just because you had bad results doesn't mean your stuff was bad. And you have to, like, get a reality check instead of listening to all the doubters and haters and stuff.
So nothing has made me respect pitching quite like seeing a pitcher's top 2 weapons overlaid. Realizing, like, it's almost impossible to tell what is coming until it's like 2/3 the way down the pike has changed the way I view hitting, right? It just makes you respect how hard hitting that baseball is. So pardon my ignorance here, but where did the overlays come from? Was that your baby?
It was my, like, I had seen them done, but more like seeing them done as, hey, this is this pitcher's arsenal. Look at all these pitches that he throws. What I did is more tried to figure out, like, the tunneling effect and the best way to illustrate it. So that is where that came from. It's my baby and popularization of it. I didn't invent the overlay. I kind of invented that way of showing. Yeah. I don't want to, like, I'm not going to take credit when credit isn't due, but I did popularize it in that way. And it's all because it's the way my mind works, because you sit there and it's not just pitchers getting paid millions of dollars. Hitters get paid millions of dollars too, and they're not that bad. Like a hitter swinging at a pitch way out of the zone, everybody can see that. Hey, why'd you swing at that pitch? Fans are yelling at you. You suck. Why did you do that? And this is to help show the reason why. And hey, maybe you should think about the other pitchers or what that hitter thought he saw that he was swinging at that he didn't get. Like he would have looked great if he got what he was guessing. And hitters don't pick up spin all that well. That's been documented. So they get people to say, "Oh, he should pick up the spin. He's not that good." Nobody picks up spin really well. Maybe like Ted Williams back in the day, but it's just not a thing. They pick up shapes a little bit, release some different things in release points. So that's another thing overlays show is if pitchers releasing things differently. But generally, they don't. Hitting is a big guess, and you're trying to eliminate pitches to help your success. So I hope. I've been told, it's actually like my account is a low key hitting account because it gives people different respect for hitting. And I totally agree with that. I think that's true.
Well, I know there's times I like you'll overlay a sweeper with a two seam with run, and you're just like, it literally looks exactly the same in the delivery and coming out of the guy's hand, and then it's going 18 inches apart in two different ways, and you're like, how would you even guess?
Oh, I know, and you have and two of my favorite pitchers to do that with, or Manoah can be absurd when you have his two seamer and his slider. Overlaying those, and Kevin Gausman with a splitter, like again, that it gives you even more respect for that pitch. It's like, I don't know how to tell the difference between that and his fastball until I swing and the ball's on the ground. Like it's really, really tough. And those are two guys that I think overlays do a really good job of explaining why they're so good.
So I do want to talk the sweeper here. I know you brought up Chris Bassett, a good buddy of yours, and quickly becoming endeared to Jays fans here as that first outing of the year is getting further and further away. It's one of the most hyped pitches out there right now, mostly because of Shohei Ohtani, right? And I know just last week you put out a great video explaining what the sweeper is, and everyone watching this, go watch the video. But for right now, could you give us some broad strokes here as to what exactly the sweeper is and why is it gaining so much popularity around the league?
Yeah, so the sweeper isn't really like a new pitch. Mm-hmm. It's a pitch that has been around, and actually a former Blue Jay, Dave Stieb, probably had one of the most ridiculous ones before we even called it a thing. Like we just had a name slider, but just like all squares are rectangles, all pitches, yes, a sweeper is a type of slider, but is a different type of slider, just like a square is a different type of rectangle. So it's not a new pitch per se, it's a new categorization. And we figured out it has mostly horizontal movement, predominantly horizontal movement. Every pitch has depth. So if you see it drop, it's not like it's just going to go straight sideways, but it does tend to sweep across the plate like a Dave Stieb slider back in the day. But what's new about it is we realized how to replicate it. So there's this science that has come out very recently in the last couple of years called seam shifted wake that my friend Barton Smith, who's an aerospace engineering professor, had discovered, because we used to think all the movement came from just pure spin on the ball. We didn't realize it came also from the air passing over the seams of the ball. And if you spin it in a certain way, the seams aren't necessarily symmetrical. And if they're symmetrical, like a four seam spin, nothing really happens due to the seams. But if you can create a shape where the ball spins kind of in an asymmetrical manner, so usually it's a two seam type spin, that it'll consistently, a seam will be in a space that'll create a wake behind the baseball that causes it to move. Like on a two seamer, it'll add extra movement to, or it'll do it with a slider or sweeper. So teams realize this, and I think it was from really dissecting Corey Kluber's sweeper breaking ball thingy that he threw for years and was just dominant with it. And people started saying, well, how does he do that? He's not magic. Like he's not putting this magic spell on the ball. There has to be a reason. So smart people, using all this new technology, figured it out. And if you can get a ball to spin exactly the right way, and it's not the same release for everybody, it's not the same grip for everybody, but if you can make the ball spin the right way, you will cause it to sweep a ton. without having a ridiculous amount of RPMs on the ball. Like if you spin a ball a lot, it's going to move a lot generally, unless it's a pure gyro spin. But if you get it in the right orientation and the wind takes care of it, even if it's not spinning a ton or you don't have a ridiculously high spin rate, like Shohei's spin rate isn't amazing. His movement's amazing because he has such an attention to detail to make the ball move in the exact right way through the air to cause it to sweep. So that's kind of the key of the pitch. It's effective because if you think about it, you look at an overlay, you start it down with a fastball and all of a sudden your bat's just not long enough to cover the pitch. And if you're swinging up at it, you know, a slider with depth, if you swing it a tiny bit up, you may luck into hitting a ball sometimes. If a ball's predominantly sweeping, now you have to deal with both the depth of the pitch as well as the sweep of the pitch, and you run out of bat quickly. So it makes, you know, you can get some swings and misses on it. So it's really a phenomenon that we've just figured out how to replicate. It's been around for a while. It's a subset of a slider, and it is one of my favorite pitches to tweet because you look at it and you're like, movement catches eyes. Like just on Twitter, on YouTube, whatever it is, you see that ball move like that, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, that's so sick." So I love the pitch, and I think fans generally like it too. They don't like the term because they don't understand it yet, but it's been called a sweeper by major league pitchers for a while and by major league organizations for a while. It's just now been adopted as a pitch type by baseball savants and others.
That's a good one.
You mentioned, like, you set it up with the wake shift, the seam shifted wake, and then the wind does the rest of the work, right? Have we come up with any sort of a weather set that maybe works better, like hot temperature days or an open roof versus a closed roof? Like, have we figured that out, that like a sweeper really plays in an open roof versus a closed dome or anything like that?
That is a fantastic question. And I think we've just started scratching the surface on some of this stuff, but we will be able to measure it. That is absolutely great. You may say, hey, we're in a dome today. We might not want to throw this because it's going to move 2 inches less than normal, or the wind's in my face today, so it's going to either move more or move less. To my knowledge, we haven't figured that out, but I can guarantee you somebody's working on it. Yes, that is a really, really good question. As a matter of fact, I might ask this of some of my professor friends.
Please do. Let me know.
Yeah. No, I love that question, and I will guarantee you that there are absolutely people trying to figure that out. So yeah, I have not figured it out nor seen any correlation, but I haven't really tried. And I love that question. Very good.
See, like, how do hitters hit? Like, this is just like the more we dissect pitching,
I don't care.
Like,
I want them never to hit.
Like, it's just unreal.
It really is. And it does give you an extra respect for why it's so hard and why these guys, the other thing is why these guys swing for home runs. Because if you're gonna hit a mistake, you want to hit a mistake far. But if you're gonna guess right, you want to guess right and win big. Because if you win small and you just make contact, you might get out still. If you hit a ball out, they ain't gonna catch it, right? So you want to hit it really hard. Yeah. So it makes you you've got to bet big, because otherwise you're dead anyway. If you just try to put the ball in play, fielders are too good, pitching's too good, you're probably going to get out anyway. So you might as well hit it really hard.
Well, and then you're counting on the guy behind you to also guess right too, right? So
yeah, exactly. Totally.
The advice of don't think makes so much sense now. Like, like it's just like the way you could easily just outthink yourself out of an at bat so easily. Like,
could you imagine trying to, like, I think that's exactly right. I think you have to see ball, hit ball a lot of times, or guess. Say, yeah, I'm looking for a fastball on the outer third, and if I see a pitch that looks like a fastball out of third, I'm swinging at it. Otherwise, I'm not going to swing at it until I have 2 strikes or something like that. And, that type of approach makes a lot of sense. So you're simplifying it. The more you think and you hit, it's really, really tough. Just like if you think about your mechanics when you're pitching, it's really, you can't move naturally. So you don't throw as hard and all that stuff. And why fans booing and all that stuff gets in hitters' heads and pitchers' heads. And it makes it really tough to do their jobs. I know that's fans' jobs, but it also makes it harder for your players to do stuff. Oh, and I'm seeing R.A. Dickey on the wall back there, right?
He is my guy. I love Dickey so much.
So one of the things about a knuckleball is the reason it moves is a lot of this wake, like it doesn't move because of spin, right? So it depends on when the air is catching a seam that will make a wake behind the ball and make it move a different way. So that's actually the simplest way of thinking about seam shifted wake. Because when you see the ball moving like that, it's all because of how the air catches a seam on the baseball.
Turbulence, just like in a plane, right?
It is exactly turbulence. That is exactly right.
Okay, Rob, we have so many listener questions. We'll get trouble if we don't get to them right away here, but I do have one last one for you. And it's just because I love your interviews so much. Almost every guy you talk to, it's just so fascinating. And you actually, a couple years back now, you sat down with one of my favorite dudes, a guy many Jays fans still have a lot of love for, but a polarizing guy. You talked with Marcus Stroman for about 90 minutes. And honestly, Rob, I felt like I was almost in class learning the science of baseball. Like it was dense, the knowledge that he was imparting, and it was so fun to watch. Did you know what to expect from Stro before you sat down with him? Were you expecting Professor Marcus to show up?
I love Stroman, and we've been friendly for years. Like I think he's a great guy for the sport of baseball. He says what's on his mind. Everybody doesn't have to agree with it. He tries to be as positive as he can, but he also can be, if you're a jerk to him, he's going to be a jerk back or just block you or something. That's just, he wants positive energy around him. I kind of had an idea because I know he thinks about a lot of stuff. He and I had been talking back and forth about working on his changeup grip, and I'd send him different grips and stuff. So we got to know each other really well. And we're from, like, he grew up 5 minutes from where I grew up on Long Island. So we had that going for us. I think he had a glass of wine with him, and he was just chilling. Great dude. And like I think he thinks about the game a ton. He's always trying to get better. He has to. Like, he didn't grow up with ridiculous size, obviously. Crazy smart, good athlete, great attitude for pitching. But yeah, I love that conversation. It's one of my favorites, just to sit down and talk to him and talk about life. And I've had him on other times, just mentoring pitchers, because he has a lot of good things to say. And I think is really good in the mental game too. He's good at just keeping a clean slate when he pitches.
His enthusiasm
So
for
good.
the science of pitching was just, I don't know how you could not be enthralled with it, but yeah.
Also for little kids, like, he wants everybody to grow up and have a chance. And he wrote a book on it to try to get little kids into sport. Everybody can hate a player and hate on a player. He is just not hate worthy guy. And I love the dude. I love watched him. I think I love what he's about. And I'm a big fan. I consider him a friend. So good guy.
I mean, truly, that moment in 2015 when he came back from that injury about 3 months beforehand and then literally put the Blue Jays on his back, like, it was just such a mental toughness, a display that you just don't get to see very often. It was just, as a Jays fan, I still love him to this day.
Totally agree, and I'd like to see him do it in Chicago too, because a very good fan base, especially when you're winning. Like, if you win in Chicago, they're going to love you. And he's showing signs of that. Like, he is a leader. He's great around, with young pitchers, trying to help them out. And I think he's great for the fan base too. He does a lot of things that people don't see. He doesn't promote a lot, but he does things for inner city kids and trying to bring the sport to the masses. Great dude. And again, you're right, that coming back from that took a ton of mental strength. I remember when he said, the comeback will be legendary. And I was like, okay, I'm bummed that you got hurt.
Yeah.
And then it was legendary. He did exactly what he said.
Rob, we can't thank you enough for how generous you've been with your time. We are so honored that you joined us, and this has been such a pleasure and so exciting. We will throw to Adam here for listener questions before we let you out of here. But again, thank you.
Okay, first one comes in from AA Ron, wants to know, curious what your favorite metrics are for analyzing pitcher performance.
I love whiffs. So you give me, whiff rate on pitches, really important to me. I like K per nine, simple stat, but give me a guy that strikes out a lot of folks and gets a high whiff rate. It's good for what I do, but it also means probably longer term success. So I like that versus the luck stats where, you know, ERA can be lucky. It can fluctuate. To me, if you're making guys look bad and whiff, that's always a good thing.
All right, next one comes in from Johnny Eaton. Says, do you think the sticky tack controversy is over or has just gradually been ignored more and more by the umps, or has been replaced with some other methodology to bend the rules? I ask because some pitchers had a drop in spin rate when the crackdown happened, but magically now it seems to be back.
Yeah, great question. I think it's mostly done with. You're going to see occasional things flare up, like the Domingo Herman thing, which I don't think was much of anything, to be honest. What pitchers have done to adjust, totally right. Originally spin rates went down a ton when they started implementing this, but then pitchers started using more rock rosin tied to just sweat. So if you when you do it rosin first, it's powdery and doesn't do much. But if you have some sweat, and you'll see a lot of pitchers go to their hair, they're not grabbing anything other than the sweatiest part on their body that they can find, and trying to make the rosin more tacky. And with that, they're getting a grip. I think it'll eventually all go away when we move to a tackier baseball so that pitchers can get a grip on the ball.
Is that the plan?
It is a plan. They're testing it.
Good.
And I think they're testing the minor leagues right now. So that's the answer. Like, we shouldn't be throwing cue balls because it's not good for hitters. It's not good for pitchers. You have to have more grip strength on the ball. So it's kind of likely you might hurt yourself if you're not used to it. I know Glasnow blamed his arm issues on that, and he's not necessarily wrong. So that's hopefully where we end up. And I think that is where we end up, is with a tackier baseball, so that everybody's on a level playing field, that we're not using this super glue and stuff, stuff like that, which is unfair. Let's make it all even and then, compete.
Out of curiosity, have you noticed, is it tougher for pitchers just starting the game before they get sweaty?
Usually they do something, like they figured it out. It would be. Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
You're right. But it would be. And especially on colder days. You're right. So on colder days, you would, or like, you put icy hot or something to make you sweat would be a useful thing. It's not because it does anything to baseball. It's because you're sweating. But yeah, like, it's the reason why in early games, you'll see less control. Try throwing a baseball with no sweat on your hands, and it's like a cue ball. It's really tough. So you do have to do something to generate something to activate it. That's why in the olden days, they used pine tar. Like Nolan Ryan would say that, yeah, we use pine tar to help our curveball. And so did pretty much everybody. It just was accepted because they needed it for a grip. They didn't know anything about spin rates. They weren't doing it to make their pitches nasty. They were doing it so they didn't throw the ball over the backstop.
Well, that kind of leads into our last question here, although you kind of touched on it. But Andrew McLeod wants to know what your thoughts are on substances pitchers should be allowed to use. And you mentioned just a pre-tacked ball.
Yeah.
So my follow-up to that then is, how far away are we from having Major League Baseball just figure out baseballs? Because it's been such a gong show for the last few years.
Totally. And I think some of it is inadvertent. Some of it is because, like, if you bought 2 leather couches, they're not going to be stitched exactly the same because there's humans doing this stuff. Like, it's going to be, one's going to be good, one's going to be bad. That's why you see pitchers throw out baseballs. Some seams might be janky. Now, there were batches of baseballs that were clearly different. And I would love to see that be standardized. There's no reason, now that we know this, before it probably happened over the years 1,000,000 times and we never could measure it. Mm-hmm. Now we can measure it, and everybody, when you see all the stuff go out of line, you're seeing stats like this, and then all of a sudden it takes a jump, and it's because of the baseball. You can't fool anybody anymore. Before you could, when you didn't have these stats. So I think it's been going on for a while. It would be great if we could standardize it. Obviously, I think MLB would rather do that, because now with them if you're embracing betting on sports and other stuff, and the integrity of records and all stuff, you can't have things that can be manipulated. Just make the baseball standard, and just for the season, get it all in one batch.
At least ditch the term Goldilocks balls.
Right. I know. It really should be. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to my man Kikuchi, who is like, stay with him. He is a positive force in baseball again. I can tell that's just from watching the dude K-strut. Like when he K-struts, it is so, he's like the happiest, most excited dude on the planet. And it's great to see him have success like his last outing. Give me guys like that. He's a fun guy to watch. I hope he has a big year, and everybody stay behind him. Like he's a good dude to watch pitch, and I hope he has a big year.
Love it.
Rob, do you believe in Yusei Kikuchi in 2023?
Hell yeah, I do.
Love it. Love it.
Let's go.
Honestly, again, man, we are just so thrilled that we've got the one and only pitching ninja on the show. We can't thank you enough, Rob. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, guys.